Beneath 10,000 meters of crushing ocean, where sunlight fades and silence rules, lies Fishman Island, a kingdom born of beauty, tragedy, and forgotten history. To the world above, it's nothing more than a stopover to the New World, yet to those who know, it's the beating heart of a prophecy. Coral palaces shimmer with ethereal light, schools of fish glide through glass-domed cities, but under that beauty hides centuries of blood and broken dreams. Every stone in Ryugo Palace whispers of a history the celestial dragons wanted buried, a history where chains weighed heavier than oceans themselves. The fishmen and merfolk were never born free, they were born into a world that labeled them lesser. Shadows beneath humanity's cruel gaze. Children grew up hearing fairy tales of the surface, but in their hearts, they carried scars, passed down from generations of chains and whips. Fishman Island was supposed to be a sanctuary, yet it became a cage, a reminder that peace is fragile when built on inequality. Long before Luffy raised his flag there, the island's story was carved in pain, rebellion, and the dream of coexistence that felt forever out of reach. Queen Otohime stood as a beacon, fragile in frame but unbreakable in spirit, daring to dream of a bridge between races divided by hate. Her speeches echoed through coral streets, her hands trembling as she reached for signatures, each stroke of ink a fragile prayer for freedom. Yet, even as she dreamed, the shadow of Fisher Tiger loomed, a warrior scarred by slavery, a rebel forged in the fires of Holy Land cruelty. He carved history not with words, but with blood, storming Marijua, breaking chains, freeing slaves, and igniting a fire that still burns in whispers today. Fisher Tiger refused the sun's kindness, refusing even human blood, a symbol of pride twisted by the cruelty of the surface world. His banner was freedom, his war cry justice, yet his scars revealed the bitter truth that liberation often bleeds into vengeance. Between Otohime's dream and Fisher Tiger's rage, Fishman Island was torn in two, hope clashing against hatred, compassion against the weight of history. Children grew up divided, some whispering of peace, others sharpening blades, knowing the world above would never see them as equals. And yet destiny had already chosen this kingdom, a place whispered in the will of Joy Boy, etched into the void centuries' silence. The poneglyph hidden in its depths doesn't just carry history, it carries a promise, a bond unfulfilled, a debt the surface still owes. Fishman Island is not just geography, it is prophecy, a crossroads where the sun will one day shine brightest beneath the sea. But to understand its true history, you must step deeper into betrayal, sacrifice, and a dream that refused to drown even in the darkest waters. Imagine a kingdom standing at the bottom of the sea, its fate pulled between two impossible paths, peace through love or freedom through fire. Queen Otohime's hands trembled as she preached compassion, yet her voice shook the ocean itself, carrying a faith that even prejudice could not drown. She believed the surface wasn't just cruel, it was misunderstood, that humans and fishmen could one day share sunlight without shadows of hate. But where Otohime saw bridges, Fisher Tiger saw scars. Wounds carved too deep by chains and branding irons to ever heal with speeches. When Tiger stormed Marijua, it wasn't just rebellion, it was history tearing open, the enslaved rising, the heavens themselves trembling at his roar. Yet for all his power, he bore silence like a curse, never revealing the full torment humans inflicted, never betraying the weight of his scars. His refusal to take human blood was more than pride. It was defiance, a final statement that he would never forgive their cruelty. Children whispered his name with awe, soldiers painted banners in his image, and for the first time the surface trembled at a fishman's shadow. But hope is fragile, and when Otohime fell, struck down by an assassin's bullet, the ocean itself seemed to weep with rage and despair. Her dream was drowned in tears, her blood staining the coral streets, and the signatures she gathered fluttered away like broken wings. The kingdom fractured. Some clung to her vision of coexistence,
while others hardened their hearts, convinced the surface would always see them as monsters. This divide shaped generations, and the children of Fishman Island grew up carrying two legacies: the dreamer's hope and the warrior's wrath. Amid this struggle, whispers of Joy Boy lingered, a promise etched on ancient stone, an apology that still echoed through the ages. That poneglyph in the sea forest wasn't just a relic. It was proof that Fishman Island was destined for a role far greater. Joy Boy's failure was more than history. It was a chain dragging the island's fate, a promise left unfulfilled, waiting for a new dawn. Could this prophecy mean salvation or another betrayal? The people didn't know, but destiny was already winding its threads around the kingdom's heart. For in the future, it wouldn't be Otohime or Tiger who would decide Fishman Island's fate, but a boy with a straw hat. His flag would not only protect them, but challenge the world itself, forcing even the celestial dragons to tremble at his audacity. Yet before that future, the island endured storms of despair, haunted by prejudice from above and division within, a kingdom caught in endless currents. And in that struggle lies the true history, not just of fishmen and merfolk, but of what it means to chase freedom beneath crushing seas. Beneath the coral palaces, shadows spread. Resentment burned like wildfire, carried by Hody Jones, a disciple of hate wielding rage as his weapon. He preached vengeance in whispers, poisoning young hearts with stories of human cruelty, twisting pain into hatred, feeding flames that once drowned Otohime's fragile dream. To him, coexistence was betrayal, weakness disguised as hope, and he vowed Fishman Island would rise, not as partners, but as conquerors of humanity.
But even in darkness, small lights flickered. Children remembering Otohime's gentle touch, elders whispering about Joy Boy, and Neptune mourning silently within his throne. The Sea Kings stirred restlessly, as if destiny itself waited, aware the island's fragile peace teetered on the edge of collapse once more. Prophecies spoke of Poseidon, an ancient weapon reborn, not as destruction, but as a child. Shirahoshi, carrying the power to command the sea. She was no warrior, no queen of blood, but a gentle soul, weeping easily, unaware her voice could bend titans of the ocean. Imagine the weight. A princess barely grown, holding a power so vast it could sink kingdoms or save them, depending on her choices. Her tears weren't weakness, they were destiny's signal, proof that Fishman Island's fate would no longer be decided by warriors alone. Yet before Shirahoshi could rise, darkness struck again. Hody's hatred erupted, his forces seizing control, banners of vengeance unfurling across the undersea kingdom. Streets that once echoed with laughter drowned in fear as children hid in shells, and the legacy of Otohime seemed lost forever. Neptune, bound and broken, could only watch, his kingdom collapsing around him, the ocean echoing with the roar of rebellion disguised as justice. For Hody didn't just want power, he wanted to erase Otohime's dream completely, replacing hope with hatred carved into every stone of the kingdom. And in that abyss, when everything seemed swallowed by despair, destiny's hand finally moved, carrying with it a boy wearing a straw hat. Luffy didn't come as savior, king, or chosen one. He came as himself, reckless, fearless, carrying freedom in every punch he threw. His battle wasn't just fists against blades, but ideals clashing, the dream of coexistence versus the nightmare of vengeance, both crashing in tidal fury. Every strike shook the water, every clash thundered louder, until even the Sea Kings turned their gaze, sensing history being rewritten beneath their waves. And in the end, it wasn't hatred that roared loudest. It was the Straw Hats' laughter, echoing hope in a kingdom drowning in pain. With one final punch, Luffy shattered not only Hody's body, but the chains of despair, proving Otohime's dream still breathed beneath the ocean. The kingdom watched in stunned silence as Luffy, battered yet unyielding, stood tall, declaring not conquest but freedom, shaking an island drowning in despair.
His words weren't politics or prophecy, they were raw, unfiltered conviction, the kind only a pirate with nothing to lose could scream. "This is my friend's island," he roared, voice echoing through coral caverns, daring anyone to defy the dream Otohime once carried within fragile hands. And somehow, in that reckless defiance, Otohime's voice returned, not through speeches or scrolls, but through a boy who lived only for freedom. Shirahoshi's tears fell like pearls, shimmering across the battlefield as her power stirred, the Sea Kings answering her cry with thunderous, awe-inspiring reverence. Imagine that. Creatures vast enough to crush continents, bowing before a princess trembling with fear, yet choosing to embrace compassion rather than destruction. The Sea Kings themselves whispered destiny, acknowledging Shirahoshi not as weapon, but as Poseidon reborn, carrying the will to bridge ocean's rage and surface's arrogance.
In that instant, the dream Otohime died for, and the prophecy Joy Boy failed to complete, began breathing again within Shirahoshi's trembling heart. And Luffy, laughing with broken teeth, looked at her not as weapon or queen, but as ally, promising to protect her choice with everything. That moment shifted everything. The kingdom no longer whispered of vengeance, but of hope, as if Otohime's spirit finally found a vessel in her. Hodi's defeat wasn't just victory, it was rejection of hatred, a message carved across generations that coexistence wasn't weakness, but strength only the brave understood. For centuries, Fishman Island was shackled to fear, chained by history's cruelty, yet here in shattered ruins, a new legend began breathing through courage. Neptune bowed not to Luffy's strength, but to his spirit, acknowledging the Straw Hat carried a will strong enough to rival the ocean itself. Even enemies paused, their hatred fractured by laughter, realizing freedom wasn't granted through power alone, but through the courage to dream despite oceans of pain. And yet behind every victory, shadows lingered. Joy Boy's apology, a promise unfulfilled, reminding that history's wounds never vanish, they wait beneath tides. Was Luffy the answer to that ancient apology, or simply another bearer of its burden, destined to stumble where legends once fell? The question echoed across the seas, whispered by currents, carried by Sea Kings, lingering heavy within Shirahoshi's tears, as destiny reached toward her trembling hands. Fishman Island's history wasn't finished, it was evolving, each moment a ripple destined to collide with the surface world in storms yet unseen. Because freedom, no matter how loudly it's shouted, demands sacrifice, and the ocean itself seemed to wait, testing whether these fragile dreams could endure. For even in celebration, the horizon darkened, and the truth loomed. Fishman Island's real story was only beginning, its heaviest chapters still unwritten. The seas outside trembled, as if the world itself leaned closer, waiting to witness whether this fragile island's dream would rise or shatter. In shadows, whispers of the celestial dragons coiled, their greed unshaken, their eyes already turning toward Shirahoshi, the living key to unimaginable power. Fishman Island's joy was fragile, balanced on the blade of history's cruelty, every laugh echoing against centuries of chains refusing to break completely. Neptune knew this. Every fatherly smile hid fear, every cheer drowned beneath knowledge that freedom without vigilance could vanish faster than tides receding. Yet Luffy's presence changed something indescribable. He wasn't savior or king, just a reckless boy declaring war on the world, daring history to bend. That's why people believed, because Luffy didn't ask for crowns, he asked for dreams, and that defiance cracked walls history once called unbreakable. Shirahoshi clutched her chest, trembling, yet for the first time she didn't hide, instead embracing destiny as a choice, not a curse. Was this Joy Boy's will reborn, or something even greater, a promise rewritten by laughter, courage, and bonds forged where the sun never shone? The ocean itself seemed to roar in approval, waves crashing like drums, announcing a new chapter carved not by kings, but by dreamers. In that moment, Fishman Island was no longer just an undersea kingdom, it was a beacon, whispering to every oppressed soul above. Still, the prophecy lingered, an unfulfilled apology, a war yet to come, and a promise still demanding answers beneath stars neither side understood. The surface would not forgive easily, nor would the sea forget centuries of scars. Reconciliation would demand storms greater than any battle. And somewhere, across the grand line, eyes in shadows smiled, preparing, waiting, as though destiny itself was a game played with broken pieces. But here, now, beneath 10,000 meters of crushing water, a spark lit.
small but eternal, carried by a pirate's reckless grin. That grin promised something even history couldn't erase, not peace granted by rulers, but freedom seized by those unafraid to dream against the impossible. Fishman Island's story wasn't an end, it was a beginning, a ripple destined to collide with legends yet unborn, rewriting everything we thought eternal. Will the surface embrace them, or will fear tighten chains again, drowning hope beneath oceans of prejudice? The answer waits, heavy, just beyond the horizon. Every legend starts with pain, but what matters is whether the pain breaks us or forges us into something greater, unshakable, unforgettable. And so, Fishman Island breathed again, not through kings or weapons, but through a dream too stubborn to drown, too bright to extinguish. This is the real history, not chains, not blood, but the courage to believe in a tomorrow where the sea and sky unite.